A lawsuit in Michigan is taking aim at the state's property tax laws. Some homeowners say they're too harsh. A new article from Reason magazine examines the stories of people whose houses have been seized in the state. Now, in one instance, a man says that he only owed $8.41 in property taxes, but he says that that was enough for the county officials to seize his property and sell it for far less than the amount for which he bought it for, but way more than $8, I'll tell you that much. So Eric Boehm is the reporter who wrote that article, and he's joining us now from Washington. So this is a really interesting topic. I know you're focusing on sort of Michigan, but yeah, I live in Philadelphia, and I know for many of these cities that are dealing with the issue of blighted properties, it's a conundrum. They want to get rid of these homes, but figuring out how to do it without sort of taking property from people is a bit of a challenge. So many of the homeowners' complaints surrounding something called Act 123 in the article that you did. Just explain how this legislation works.
Well, thanks for having me on, Anne Marie, and good morning. I'm a Pennsylvanian too, actually, so I mean, I'm familiar with Philadelphia's struggles there. And that's exactly why Act 123 was passed by the Michigan legislature all the way back in 1999. The idea was to go after blighted and abandoned properties. And what it did is it allowed county treasurers to effectively become debt collectors. So if a person like Uri Raffelli, who is the 83-year-old retired engineer at the center of our story, who owed that $8 tax debt that you showed there on the screen, you know, he owed taxes to a municipality in Oakland County, Michigan. So the way Act 123 works is that it allows Oakland County to pay the municipality for those unpaid taxes, and then they take over the debt. And after a very quick, a very sort of accelerated process that was set up by Act 123, just a little bit over 2 years, if that tax debt isn't settled, the county then can seize the property, as they did with Uri Raffelli's property in Oakland County. They can sell it at auction. They sort of balance their own accounts, you know, settling off the amount that they paid the municipality, and then they get to just keep the rest. The rest of it kind of goes into a slush fund, a delinquent tax revolving fund that the county can use more or less for anything at once. Right, and this whole thing was put in place to get a handle on blighted properties. You're talking about the Detroit area. You know, Detroit went through as everyone knows, you know, a major sort of crisis in regards to the budget there and the income. And so they were figuring out a way to sort of make money and also bring Detroit back. So in your piece, you discussed just one survey that found that officials' use of the home equity forfeiture was actually leaving Detroit with more vacant, blighted properties. Yeah. How does that work? Yeah, that's right. So this law, as I said, was passed in 1999. So that's actually obviously before the Great Recession, before the housing bubble burst, before Detroit's bankruptcy. But what happened is in the aftermath of those three things, there were all those stories in the media, right, about all the blighted and abandoned properties in Detroit and all of these properties that were going on auction incredibly cheaply, right, that you could buy at auction for just a few $1,000s. And some of those properties, the Quicken Loans Community Fund, partnering with the Obama administration, kind of in the aftermath of Detroit's bankruptcy, they went through and interviewed some 60,000 people in Detroit who owed back taxes. Most of them were really unaware of the potential consequences, like the fact that they could lose their property and all the equity in their homes if they didn't settle those tax debts quickly. And more importantly, they found that the accelerated process of kicking people out of their homes and putting those properties up for auction was obviously the county was making money off of that. There's an incentive there for county officials to do this, but that it was actually making Detroit's housing crunch worse because it wasn't just targeting blighted and abandoned properties, but it was actually kicking people out of homes where people were actively living. They had just fallen behind on their taxes by a year or so, maybe because of, you know, maybe they lost jobs, maybe because of other consequences from the recession and the bankruptcy. Yeah, in the case of the gentleman that you profile in your article, he had fallen behind and then he paid his taxes, but there was a little bit of an oversight. He didn't include the interest, and that's where the $8.41 came from, and that's what got him into so much trouble. I'm wondering, did you reach out to the state or the county in regards to this? Yeah, we did. We didn't necessarily get a lot back because there's an ongoing lawsuit right now. In fact, it was in front of the Michigan Supreme Court just yesterday for oral arguments, a lawsuit being brought by the Pacific Legal Foundation representing Uri Raffelli and some of the other homeowners in our piece. And they're challenging the law at the base of all this, Act 123. But what the counties have argued in court, what they argued to us, is a couple of different things. One, they say that they need this law to make sure that people pay their property taxes, that they sort of need the switch to make sure ensure that people pay their taxes. I don't know that I really buy that, because this law is pretty uniquely awful in Michigan. People pay their property taxes in other states without the threat of losing, not just losing their property, but potentially all the equity that's in the property too. They also argue that then sort of conversely to that, they argue that this law is not meant to be overly punitive because, of course, there's the Eighth Amendment prohibition against excessive fines and fees, right? That doesn't just apply to the federal government. That applies to states and localities too. And I think it's pretty easy to look at this and say, wow, Uri Raffelli lost his home over an $8 tax debt, or lost his property over an $8 tax debt, and the $25,000 in equity that he had put into this, a house that he had purchased just a few years earlier for $60,000. That seems pretty excessive in terms of a fine or a fee in this case. Yeah. And so the county's kind of running into that argument too. We don't have a decision yet, obviously. Oral arguments just happened yesterday, a decision expected early next year.
All right. Eric Boehm, thank you very much.
Thank you.